I feel nothing for my new baby sister, and now my entire family thinks I'm heartless. I, 16M, am currently sitting in the local library because it's the only place I can go where someone isn't staring at me, waiting for me to activate some kind of brotherly instinct. My house has become a psychological experiment, and I think I'm failing it. When my mom died when I was 12, my world didn't just change, it went quiet. My mom was the emotional center of our house. She was the one who translated my moods to my dad. When she passed, my dad and I fell into this functional but distant routine. We talked about school, sports, and food, but we never really talked about us. Then, about 2 years ago, he met his wife. Things moved fast. By January of last year, they were married. I didn't hate her. I still don't. She's a fixer. She came into our house and immediately started changing curtains, buying new plates, and trying to heal us with home-cooked meals and forced family game nights. I remained polite. I did the dishes. I said thank you for the laundry. But I didn't call her mom, and I didn't share my secrets with her. My dad noticed. He thought I was stuck in my grief. He put me in therapy, hoping I'd open up so I could be ready for the new life he was building. Then, she got pregnant. My half-sister was born in December. I remember the day they brought her home. My dad was beaming. I haven't seen him that happy since before my mom got sick. He held her out to me the second they walked through the door. "Look, me," he said, his voice cracking. "Your sister is home." I looked at her. She was small, red-faced, and wrapped in a pink blanket. I waited for the spark. I waited for that rush of protectiveness or love that you see in movies. Nothing happened. I felt the same way I feel when I see a stranger's baby in a stroller at the mall. I just said, cool. She's small. I thought maybe it would come later. But weeks turned into months, and the nothingness remained. I don't hate her. When she cries, I don't feel annoyed or angry. I just think, oh, the baby is crying, and I wait for someone to fix it. I don't want to hurt her. I don't resent her. She's just a person who lives in my house now. My therapist, who I've been seeing for a year, noticed I never brought up the baby. Finally, she asked me directly. I told her the truth. I don't feel anything for her. I don't love her. I don't feel like a big brother. She told me that keeping this a secret was creating a wall between me and my dad. She suggested a joint session. I agreed, thinking it would be a safe space. I was wrong. In the session, when I finally said the words out loud to my dad, the room felt like the oxygen had been sucked out of it. "Dad, I'm not trying to be mean," I said. "I just don't have a bond with her. I look at her and I feel neutral. I don't feel like her brother." My dad didn't get angry at first. He just looked devastated. He kept asking, "But why? What did she do? Is it because of the wife? Is it because you miss your mom?" I kept trying to explain that it wasn't a because. It just is. He looked at me with this profound disappointment, like I was a broken version of the son he thought he had. He told me it was unnatural and that he was worried about my emotional capacity. After that session, home life became a nightmare. My dad decided he could fix my lack of feelings through sheer repetition. It was like he was trying to program a computer. Every single day, the second I'd get home from school, he'd be there. "Hey, me, hold her while I get a glass of water." He'd stay in the kitchen for 20 minutes, clearly watching from around the corner to see if I'd start cooing at her or playing with her toes. I'd just sit there, holding her like a fragile bag of groceries, staring at the wall until he came back. Then came the hero speeches. He'd sit me down and say things like, "You're going to be the most important person in her life. She's going to look up to you. You're going to be her protector." It felt so fake. He was talking about a future that I couldn't see and didn't want to be responsible for. His wife started picking up on the weirdness. She'd see my dad practically begging me to interact with the baby, and she'd see me doing the bare minimum. She started asking questions. My dad, trying to protect me but also clearly frustrated, told her I had bonding issues. That word, bonding issues, became the theme of the house. It made me sound like a rescue dog that was too traumatized to be petted. This past Saturday, the wife's entire extended family came over for a meet-the-baby lunch. Her parents, her 2 sisters, their husbands. It was crowded and loud. I tried to stay in my room, but my dad insisted I come down. "It'll be good for you to see how everyone else interacts with her," he whispered. "Maybe it'll rub off." It didn't rub off. It just made me feel more isolated. I sat at the end of the dining table, picking at a sandwich, while the wife's family passed the baby around like she was a holy relic. They were all making high-pitched noises and talking about who she looked like. I noticed the wife's father, let's call him the FIL, watching me. He's a big, loud guy who thinks he's an expert on everything. He'd been whispering with the wife in the kitchen earlier, and I knew they were talking about me. Eventually, my dad tried his move. He took the baby from one of the aunts and walked over to me. Look, she's awake. Why don't you take her for a bit? Show your grandpa how good you are with her. I didn't want to make a scene, so I reached out and took her. I sat there, holding her, looking down at her. She was just staring at me. I felt nothing. No warmth, no click. Just the weight of a baby. The FIL leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms, and stared at me. You know, I've been hearing about these bonding issues, he said, loud enough for the whole room to hear. I thought maybe you were just shy. But looking at you now? You look like you're holding a pile of laundry. My dad tried to laugh it off. He's just a teenager, you know how they are. They're in their own worlds. No, the FIL said, his voice getting harder. I've had 3 kids and 6 grandkids. I've never seen a boy look at his own sister with that much indifference. It's weird. It's cold. Does he even give a crap about her? Or is he just a little shit who thinks the world revolves around him? The room went dead silent. My dad's face turned bright red. That's enough, my dad said. He's going through a lot. He's 16, not 6, the FIL snapped. If he can't find it in his heart to love an innocent baby who is his own flesh and blood, then there's something fundamentally wrong with him. It's pathetic. My dad exploded. He started screaming at the FIL to get out of his house. The wife started screaming at my dad for defending my behavior. The aunts were whisking the baby away. It was chaos. I couldn't breathe. I felt like everyone in that room was looking at me and seeing a monster. I didn't say a word. I just handed the baby back to my dad, walked to the front door, and left. I walked for 4 hours. I went to the park, I went to the mall, I just moved. I kept replaying the FIL's words in my head. Fundamentally wrong. Cold. Little shit. When I finally went home, the guests were gone, but the war was still on. My dad was sitting on the couch with his head in his hands. His wife was in the kitchen, slamming cabinets. The second she saw me, she lost it. Where were you? She yelled. My father and your father almost got into a physical fight because of you. And you just walked out? You didn't even check to see if the baby was okay with all that yelling? You just left her there. I told her, you were right there. My dad was right there. She was fine. That's not the point, she screamed. The point is your first instinct was to save yourself, not her. You didn't even look at her. You proved my father right. You are a monster. I don't want you near her if this is how you're going to be. My dad tried to intervene, saying, he's not a monster, he's just overwhelmed, but I could see it in his eyes. He's starting to agree with her. He's starting to think that my neutrality is actually cruelty. Since Saturday, the wife has treated me like a criminal. She won't leave me alone in a room with the baby. She literally stands in the doorway if I have to walk past the nursery. She told my dad she doesn't feel safe with my unpredictable coldness around the child. My dad is begging me to just try harder. He wants me to write a letter to the wife and her family apologizing and explaining that I really do love her, but I'm just confused. But I can't do that. I'd be lying. I don't love her. I don't hate her. I just am. The house is silent now, except for the baby crying and the sound of my parents whispering behind closed doors about what to do with me. I feel like I'm being evicted from my own family because I can't manufacture an emotion I don't have. Am I the a-hole? Am I actually a little shit for not feeling a bond, or are they all being insane for trying to force one? Update. I'm writing this from my grandparents' guest room now, which still feels strange to say because a few months ago I would have told you nothing in my life was dramatic enough to end with me leaving my dad's house. Back then the worst thing happening was everyone watching me like I was defective because I didn't feel some automatic connection to a baby. I thought the tension would eventually burn itself out. Instead it kept building until everything collapsed, and somehow the official explanation everyone agrees on is that I caused it. The week after I wrote my last post, the atmosphere at home changed from uncomfortable to hostile. Before, my dad and his wife were united in trying to fix me. After the argument with her father, that unity started cracking. They stopped talking about bonding and started arguing about responsibility. Every discussion circled back to me, even when I wasn't in the room. I would hear my name through walls constantly, followed by long stretches of blaming each other for how things had gotten so bad. My dad insisted she and her family were overreacting. She insisted he was minimizing something serious. Neither of them seemed to notice that I was still living there, hearing every word. Her parents kept calling. I didn't hear those conversations directly, but the aftermath was obvious. She would come out of the bedroom tense and angry, and my dad would look exhausted, like someone who had spent hours defending something he wasn't sure he believed anymore. The phrase, "not safe," started appearing more often. At first it was said carefully, then openly. She said she didn't feel comfortable leaving the baby alone around me, not because I had done anything but because of how I didn't react. That distinction didn't matter once it was said out loud. Suspicion settled into the house like permanent background noise. My dad tried doubling down on forced normalcy. He encouraged family dinners, movie nights, anything that looked like proof we were still functioning. Those attempts usually ended with arguments. His wife would watch me too closely, waiting for signs of warmth that never appeared, and when nothing changed she interpreted it as confirmation that something was wrong. I started staying out longer just to avoid being observed. The library became routine because it was the only place where nobody analyzed my facial expressions. Eventually the conflict stopped being about the baby and became about trust. She believed my emotional detachment meant unpredictability. My dad believed she was unfairly labeling his son. Both positions hardened until compromise disappeared. Their arguments stretched late into the night, louder each time, pulling in old grievances that had nothing to do with me but always ended with me somehow being the catalyst. One night I woke up to shouting so intense it sounded like something had broken. I didn't leave my room, but I could hear everything clearly. She said she couldn't live in a house where she felt anxious every day. He accused her family of poisoning her against me. She said the problem existed before her parents ever visited. He asked whether she expected him to choose between his child and his marriage. Silence followed that question, heavy and long enough that even from upstairs I understood the answer had already formed. After that, things moved quickly. She started spending more time at her parents' house with the baby. At first it was framed as temporary space so everyone could calm down. Then overnight bags became permanent items. My dad told me not to worry, that couples argue all the time after a newborn arrives. He said stress made people dramatic. But his voice sounded forced, and he stopped sleeping properly. He paced the house late at night, replaying conversations aloud like he was trying to rewrite them. Her family made their opinion clear. According to them, the environment wasn't healthy for the baby, and the root of the stress was me. They didn't accuse me of violence or anything specific, they framed it as emotional instability, something vague enough to sound serious without needing proof. My lack of attachment became evidence used to explain everything else. I learned this indirectly when relatives started contacting my dad, offering advice that sounded suspiciously rehearsed. Each conversation left him angrier. The separation became official about a month after the Saturday incident. Papers arrived. Lawyers were mentioned openly. My dad sat me down and told me his marriage was falling apart because his wife didn't believe the household was safe or supportive anymore. He didn't yell. That almost made it worse. He spoke like someone delivering bad news he hadn't fully accepted himself. He said relationships sometimes fail under pressure, but then he added that none of this would have started if things had been different between me and the baby. That was the first time he directly connected the divorce to me without softening it. Word spread through both sides of the family fast. Suddenly relatives who barely spoke to me had opinions about my emotional development. Some framed it as concern, others as judgment. I heard phrases like, disturbing behavior, and warning signs. No one asked me how I actually felt. They discussed me like a case study. My dad's wife stopped coming to the house entirely. When she did communicate, it was through lawyers or short logistical messages about belongings. The divorce proceedings were ugly in a quiet, controlled way. There weren't dramatic courtroom scenes, just constant tension and paperwork. Her argument focused on emotional environment and stress. His focused on defending his parenting and rejecting the idea that his son was dangerous. Somewhere in that back and forth, I became less of a person and more of a factor in legal language. Hearing adults discuss whether your emotional responses qualify as concerning does something strange to your head. It makes you question reactions you never doubted before. My dad changed during that period. He grew withdrawn but also resentful. Some days he acted normal, asking about school or dinner. Other days he barely spoke to me at all. When he did, frustration leaked through. He never directly called me the reason his marriage ended, but he said things like how different life might have been if everyone had adapted better. Those comments landed harder than yelling would have. Her family openly blamed me. They told mutual acquaintances that the marriage collapsed because my inability to accept the baby created constant tension. That version of events traveled quickly. I started noticing adults looking at me differently when I ran errands or saw neighbors. Nothing overt, just subtle discomfort, like people weren't sure how to interact with someone labeled emotionally cold. The final argument between my dad and his wife happened over the phone, but I heard enough to understand the outcome. She said she couldn't come back to a home where she felt forced to choose between protecting her child and maintaining peace. He accused her of abandoning him during a difficult adjustment period. She responded that the adjustment never happened. By the end of the call, the marriage was effectively over even before paperwork finalized it. Afterward, my dad sat at the kitchen table for a long time without moving. When he finally spoke, he told me everything was changing and we would need to figure out a new normal. Then he added that actions have consequences, even unintended ones. He didn't elaborate, but he didn't need to. The months since have been tense and uncomfortable. Some relatives stopped inviting us to gatherings because the situation felt awkward. Others invited my dad but not me. My dad rarely argued about that. He just went alone. I could tell he felt caught between defending me and grieving the life he expected to have. At home, conversations became minimal. We coexist more than we connect. Sometimes I catch him looking at old photos on his phone, and the expression on his face carries a kind of quiet disappointment I don't know how to respond to. I keep replaying everything, wondering if a different reaction from me would have changed the outcome. Logically, I know marriages don't end over one issue alone. Emotionally, it's harder to ignore how consistently everyone points to me as the turning point. Being told indirectly and directly that your emotional neutrality destroyed a family messes with your sense of reality. I didn't scream, didn't lash out, didn't hurt anyone. I just didn't feel what they expected me to feel, and somehow that became enough. My grandparents say the divorce was inevitable and that adults made their own choices. My dad doesn't say that. His silence leaves space for doubt to grow. The wife and her family clearly believe leaving was necessary because of me. So now there are 3 versions of the story, and in 2 of them I'm the reason everything fell apart. I still don't hate my half-sister. I still don't feel anything specific toward her either. She exists somewhere else now, growing up without me involved, and I wonder if someday she'll hear a version of this story where I'm described as the cold older brother who broke her parents' marriage before she could even know me. What scares me most isn't being blamed. It's the possibility that people will keep expecting emotions to appear on command for the rest of my life, and when they don't, this will happen again. Right now I mostly feel tired and strangely detached from everything that used to define home. The house is quieter, my dad is different, and everyone seems to agree that something essential went wrong inside me. I still don't know if that's true. I just know that not feeling something turned out to have consequences far bigger than anyone warned me about, and now I'm living in the aftermath of a divorce that everyone traces back to a feeling I never had control over.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Daily Tales Update for more such stories.